Oh, nice.
Good morning. Are we ready to go? Yeah, I think we're ready. I didn't see it start recording yet.
Yeah, we're good.
We're starting? Okay. Well, good morning. I'll welcome everyone to the April 24th, 2025 Audit Committee for the San Chatham Public School System. I will make some opening remarks. We were going to recognize.
Yeah, she's not here, so
Okay,
if you want
we'll
to
hold
delay
that
that
part.
till later.
Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All in favor? The agenda is approved. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to the minutes as submitted? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the March 27th, 2025 meeting. All in favor? The minutes are approved. Our first audit is on the MSAP grants.
Hello, good morning. My name is Shauna Chapman, and I'll be presenting the audit of the MSAP, the Magnet School Assistant Program Grant. Okay, for this audit, we had 3 objectives. The first one is to identify if district complies with the MSAP grant requirements and any supporting federal, state, or local laws. The second was to identify the efficiency of the MSAP grant by analyzing how resources are allocated and managed to support ongoing program activities, and assess the effectiveness of the MSAP grant in achieving its intended educational outcomes, including the enhancement of student academic performance and the improvement of overall school quality. Okay, and a little background on this MSAP grant. The MSAP grant was awarded in the beginning of fiscal year 2021 to fund the Lighthouse Project, a STEAM initiative implemented at A.B. Williams Elementary School, Hubert Middle School, and Savannah High. The grant was awarded for 5 years, totaling $14,772,149. On July 13, 2022, the board approved through a ratification process a grant writer for this MSAP grant, and to date, the total payments is $473,114, and a 5th and final payment is scheduled for this year.
What is that amount?
It's 4% of the awarded amount for the year. Okay, and this is the summary of results. Several areas for improvement were identified in the program implementation, the financial oversight, and the effectiveness of key processes supporting the grant objectives, including performance monitoring, performance and financial monitoring, and the professional development and coordination between the MSAP management team and the school leadership. And we'll have 2 objectives. The first one is the 2 observations. Sorry, the first one is performance and financial monitoring. The grant was managed based on compliance adherence rather than compliance adherence and professional and performance outcomes. external evaluator feedback was primarily used for meeting grant compliance requirements, but not utilized to establish internal benchmarks for meeting or measuring program effectiveness. And the department submits a U.S. Department of Educational grant performance report every year. And for this year, we looked at period April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. And it did not outline strategies to address barriers preventing the achievement of program goals. And for the financial transactions, we noticed that the financial transactions did not fully comply with the best practices in financial management, budgeting, or strategic use of the grant funds. For the financial monitoring part, we did sample 42 invoices, and we looked at where those purchases were shipped and what the purchases was used for. Of those 42 invoices, 24 of those purchases were shipped to one of the magnet schools, which equaled about 84% of the 42 invoices. 18 of them were shipped to the admin office, which was about 16% of the 42 invoices. And of those 18%, 11 of those was for district-wide events, which were schools were involved that's not one of the 3 magnet programs. And these sample invoices were about 14% of all non-salary expenditures and only 2.19% of all transactions, which were non-salary and the salary invoices, salary transactions, sorry. And despite this limited sample size, we identified multiple areas highlighting the need for stronger financial oversight. And our recommendation for this observation was to develop and implement a comprehensive grant monitoring framework, integrating compliance oversight, performance measurement, and financial inspection. This framework should include clearly defined key KPIs to assess progress towards intended outcomes, and financial inspection procedures to evaluate the allowability of transactions. And the management response for this recommendation was to develop and implement a grant monitoring framework and cross-departmental collaboration action plan that clearly outlines the roles and responsibilities of school leadership, principals, supervisors, and program directors regarding the management of grant expenditures in alignment with overall program goals and individual school accountability plan key performance indicators. And the completion date for this is June 2025.
Are there any questions?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I was concerned when I read this about the deficiencies and the inaccuracies. My concern is, will any of those will have an impact on the grant itself? Will we lose any money? Or the corrective actions will take care of these things?
So no, as a simple answer, and I'll have Dr. Lewis provide some additional details, but just keeping in mind that from the federal department, we've already received approval and those funds have been reimbursed. So we're already in compliance in that regards. So we do not anticipate any challenges with regards to that.
Are there any other questions? I just have one. Am I reading your chart? When I was looking at it, am I reading this correctly? We had salary expenses of $191, $78, and $72, which is, call it $342,000 in salary expenses at the schools. Correct? On page 8. Just for FY 2022, 2023.
And what was the question, sorry?
So those are the salary expenses at the school. Is the administrative salary inclusive of that or exclusive of it? Like, is that 1.2 million in salary?
On page 5 or page 8?
Yeah, it's on page 8 in ours. It's the salary and non-salary expenditures by FY.
That's on page 5 that I'm looking at.
Yeah, in
Oh,
our
sorry.
packet, it's page 8. Don't worry about it. But either way, so I'm just trying to boil it down. We spent $342,000 in salary at the schools, and then we spent $1.2 million administrating that $342,000. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so all the non-salary was coded to the admin office, even though they go to the schools.
You're referring to the salary
Right.
account. Is that a total?
That $1.2 million in administrative salary. We spent $1.2 million in administrative
yes.
salaries.
Yes.
To manage $342,000 worth of salary at 3 schools. Am I?
So keep in mind, and Dr. Lewis, if you can,
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 2 different salary pots. The STEAM thematic specialist, the instructional technology person, and the professional development person are assigned to my office. However, their salaries come from my office at the administrative level. However, they're assigned to each school. So each school have personnel that works there every single day. However, their salary comes from the administrative office. That's why it's
Okay,
off.
that's obviously a much better story than the way this chart presents. So I'm
Correct.
glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Okay, and observation 2 was professional development and coordination between the MSAP and school leadership. A formal system to track the effectiveness of training sessions and meeting the grant objectives was not in place. We did find that the department was in compliance with teachers completing 25 hours of professional development, but there was insufficient documentation showing how the training directly supports the intended outcome of the grant. And we also found that there was no regular communication between the MSAP program director and the school leadership regarding these daily operation of these practices. We recommended to include a professional development component in the monitoring framework that's recommended in the first observation, adding a focus on identifying relevant content to address instructional needs and gaps. And the management response for this was implement a professional development scope and sequence that is strategically aligned with the school's accountability plan and the objectives of the MSAP grant. All MSAP professional development will be directly aligned to identify instructional needs with a focus on STEAM integration and whole school development. The MSAP district team, in collaboration with the School of Office leadership, will conduct regular instructional walkthroughs and feedback cycles at each school to monitor instructional practices, inform coaching, and support continuous improvement in instructional delivery. And this is to be completed by July 2025.
Are there any questions? Any discussion?
I have one question, and this grant, based on our letter that Dr. Watts had to sign this week, because this grant is specifically targeting African-American students, would this fall under DEI, and will we get paid for it?
so this is one of the grants that we shared at our last workshop that we are closely monitoring. We have been in contact with our grant liaison at the Department of Education, and Dr. Lewis can share a little bit of information regarding some of those most recent conversations. We do not anticipate, but we are still awaiting guidance, additional guidance, but again, we do not anticipate. But there have been some conversations.
I can comment too, and just briefly on this. You realize this is a federal grant, and And the Office of Civil Rights, their attorneys from Trump 1 administration actually were interfaced with us to make sure that we designed it in a way that they viewed as non-discriminatory at that point in time. So we made some adjustments at that point of time. And I cannot see us getting in any kind of, trouble with the federal government for their own grant that they worked with us to design in terms of, that what Dr. Watts just signed. Now, whether the federal government pushes back in general on this type of grant or they view it themselves as something that they do not want to support, we cannot control that. But I do not think that we can be seen as part of anything that would be in violation of since it's their own grant, basically. And
Okay.
Right. So we're safe on that front, but it does appear that we did spend some of the grant in places that were not permitted or authorized under the grant. Is that my understanding?
That is not true. Every money spent was approved because we are a reimbursable grant. They review all of our expenditures once we send it there, and we have been in compliance. We can use the funds at the district level also to include district-wide events that support our schools, because those 3 schools that we are targeting receive support and students from all of the schools in the district. So all of the initiatives that were paid for through the grant support those schools, and our district as a whole receive support as well.
And I think part of our next step really is to be more strategic in ensuring that the funds are aligned more closely to the work that's happening at the specific schools. But again, in terms of compliance, as Dr. Lewis indicated, we're okay, but we do want to do a better job of monitoring how we expend those funds as it relates to those specific schools based on their needs. And that's part of why we'll be working very closely with our school leadership partners, principal supervisors, to make sure that that monitoring oversight on how those funds are spent is really what our next steps will be.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So I read over the original grant because I wasn't here, as being new to the board. 400 plus pages of what we requested, what we promised that we would do as a result of receiving the grant funds for the Lighthouse project if we received them. And, we said that the grant would mandate that evaluators collect comprehensive data, disaggregated enrollment, applicant data, standardized test scores, on and on, to measure performance through quasi-experimental analyses. Okay. So while we're compliant in getting funds reimbursed year after year, I'm still struggling to see how we have managed this in a successful way, because the money is problematic to me as well. Even how much we paid a grant writer, but beyond that, I worry more that we weren't even keeping track of student progress academically. That concerns me, because the whole point was to do that. And going forward, I guess I'm wondering, is there a sustainability piece that you guys found in the audit where this is a sustainable thing going forward once the grant sunsets?
Dr. Lewis, do you want to answer that?
The data that you mentioned, ma'am, is collected each year, and we use that information to help our schools. That is done through our evaluator, our external evaluator, West Ed. Many of the initiatives that they have in place now at the school is sustainable. They're working toward that. We've seen quite a bit of progress and improvements in the school. It may not be as glaring because what we are doing doesn't happen overnight, but there is sustainability. We've been working toward that as well, working with the principals, supervisors to make sure those items are in place. Also, the grant initiatives, the grant goals are in the school accountability plans that the principals and their supervisors work with them each day. So it is not separate. It is not something separate. The funding that is being used through MSAP is to help support those initiatives and give them extra funding to advance those initiatives.
So
If
are
that
we
answered my question.
rigorously trying to follow the Comer model as was identified as the plan?
Actually, we had to come up with an alternative because the Comer group did not hold up their end of the bargain in giving us what we needed, so we did not renew their contract. However, to deal with the whole child, that is why we have so many other initiatives dealing with SEL, dealing with the students, helping the parents, having more initiatives in the schools. Is the reason why we went to that, because we did not have the Comer model.
Well, I guess to summarize this, and I'll be done, I applaud the effort. I think the Lighthouse Project was innovative. It was, it was a big ask. It was great that we tried. What I worry about, though, is with Dr. Watts and the cabinet, I know that they are big on KPIs, how we're doing, measuring effectiveness, and knowing if something works or doesn't work. And I applaud that. I think that is amazing, that this is the goal, right? When it feels like an audit is saying that we haven't measured outcomes successfully, at least, I mean, you may know the outcomes, the schools may individually know the outcomes, but by and large, we just know that we're not at 80% proficiency, that we are, African-American involvement was at 50% plus, but it's gone down over the years. Some of the goals that we aim to do, I guess, I just hope going forward that we are being very intentional about the measurement of outcomes. Because if we aren't, right, then we'll just risk repeating the same unproven strategies for the next, big idea that comes along that sounds good, that's going to help our students, when really we have evidence, or we could have had evidence that showed this didn't work, let's try something else that will work. That's all I'm saying. But I loved the idea. I think it was a good idea.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It does seem like the audit seems to indicate that we've got some improvements to make here. So that's the purpose of the audit.
When I was reading this, one thing I did note, and this may have been the result of one principal that was a little bit more involved than the others. A.B. Williams did relatively well. Savannah High and Hubert did not. So it's that inconsistency that's concerning.
And that is part of the next steps, right? Both in terms of our objective 1 and 2 regarding financial efficiencies and monitoring, as well as our performance, working very closely with those principals and those principal supervisors to make sure that our MSAP district team is working closely with our principal supervisors to make sure that they are monitoring as part of our commitment to overall program evaluation. And so that is the next steps.
And just to clarify, this grant ends this year?
Year 5 is next year.
Okay. So that might tie to Ms. Campbell's sustainability question. Do these programs go away, or are we applying for the grant again, or?
Actually, our grant was extended an additional year.
So into 27?
At the end of 27, and then the school district will sustain for 3 years. We had that agreement at the very beginning.
Okay.
So in actuality, the grant will not officially end until 2010. I'm sorry, 30,
Okay, thank you.
10 years.
Are there any other questions?
Sorry.
It's okay.
I usually don't talk a lot. So, one of these goals was to increase the percentage of African Americans going into the STEAM field. And I think that part of the sustainability is a big question, and not getting into the weeds, but what are we doing to achieve that? I think the original goal was ambitious. And when we're looking at grants and applying for grants, I love getting $14 million. But I don't want this to come out the wrong way. But I want us to make sure that we have a plan and we know that we can accomplish what we're applying for. So that's just a general editorial comment.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. Mr. Moss, anything else? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to accept the audit. It's been probably moved and seconded that we accept the MSAP grant audit. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Underwood?
Yep, thank you. Before we go into the internal audit dashboard, I would like to highlight Nia King. Nia, come on up here. So Nia King has been our intern for the last 2 years. She is now a senior and will be graduating, and I will let you speak on your degree and what you look forward to doing.
Hello, nice to meet
Hello, good
everyone.
morning. Congratulations.
Thank you. I will be graduating from Savannah State University on May 9th at 9 a.m. With my academics, I will be graduating with a bachelor's in not in communications, but a bachelor's in accounting, actually. Yeah. So with that, I'll be going back home, continuing my other job where I am you could say a resident activity specialist, working in a home care facility with memory care residents. So I'll be helping them with activities, things like that. And then looking forward to going in the school district or into the actual not school district, but the actual system of Fulton County and working in their finance department.
And there's no way we can get you to stay.
Really?
I thought about staying for graduate school, but I'm gonna see what else I could do first.
Oh, well, Ramon, what are we doing? Come on.
Right?
We spent all this time, come on. We gotta get the HR program working here.
I know.
This is talent.
But I'll be back to come visit and things like
All right. Well, I personally thank you for all your efforts on this, and thank you. So I
Yeah.
ask us
Great
to.
job.
Her final audit is the purchase card audit, and that will be presented to y'all in June. Unfortunately, she is going to be senioritis at that point, so I will be presenting it for you. But will be all her work. All right, so the internal audit dashboard, this is just a highlight, where the internal audit department is throughout our audits as well as CPE, and then highlight the management action plan. So on page 20, as you can see, we're moving along with our audits. Right now, we're at 38%. Again, we never were able to fulfill that position, and we're still working on that at this point. So again, like I had mentioned at last meeting, we will be moving forward in the next audit plan to just schedule it based on the current staff that we have, not in hopes of our projection. So right now, also too, the last two audits, the audit of competitive purchasing process as well as the audit of asset management, at this point, they will not be able to be completed this year. But working with the cabinet as well as the superintendent, we will reassess the risk of those and whether we need to review those. So that will be brought back to you in an audit plan as needed. You're asking a question, Roger?
Yes,
Okay, yes, sir.
big question. What is it going to take for us to be able to fill that position?
Don't know. We were really close with the last one, but I think he chose to stay because there was an opportunity to where he was. But everybody else, I think it just leads to, the pay opportunity and what they have.
You
So.
said that so delicately. So basically, we're not paying enough.
I can't say that. I can't say that for sure because I don't know what the expectation is because the last couple of candidates were from out of state.
Okay.
So I don't have enough data points to say, that cost of living to here was the difference, or what their financial needs or what their vision goals were. But yeah, it did come down to the money piece.
Yeah, I think those three audits are so important. Contract management, competitive purchasing process, and asset
We are
management.
doing contract management, so that one, but the competitive purchasing process and asset management, now, I don't know if you've paid attention, I think it was at the financial, Larry, help me out here, where you talked about potentially doing an external group coming in and looking at processes?
Yes,
can
I
speak
believe
on
it
that.
was the last finance workshop. Dr. Watts probably mentioned to some board members that we're looking at having a group come in similar to what we did for Evergreen on the HR side, have a group come in, look at our processes, our policies, and review the entire financial process, division itself, across all departments. But I believe she mentioned that last week, I believe.
So we'll have to regroup to see what her plans for that is and how we can support, or are they looking at these areas as well? Because that group, from what was presented, it's going from all the way from the budget all the way down to AP. It'll be an all-inclusive view.
My one comment would be, we do a lot of district, if there's ways that the audit department can just do audits. Or I'm just asking, is there ways to rebalance that, to free up that capacity? Because I do think those next two audits are critical. But we can discuss that.
Like I said, that's where when we'll have the discussion, when we look at what's come through for the risk assessment that we do in the audit plan, they may reemerge themselves. And then, of course, when we present the audit plan, that'll be the final, The process also includes with the risk assessment is that you all receive a email of the top 15 that came out. Oh, does Watts need to speak? Okay. Based on those final rankings, and then you all can provide input as to where you see the perceived risk is. So if this comes up, then you can obviously put that high on the marker. And that really indicates what we look at and what we review. But we don't want to duplicate if they're bringing an external group in looking at the same
Right.
thing. We don't want to
Understood.
duplicate those services.
Okay.
But we can support them in any way that we can. All right, so the next area that I want to highlight is the progress monitoring. This year, of the management action plans, we have shifted up to 52% being completed this year, so we are on target. There hasn't been many date changes at this point since, I believe, around the October time period. There is a correction I would like to point out. I noticed that this morning. It is correct on page 24, showing that it's completed, but on page, on page 33, where it talks about the audit of transportation parts, we recommended that management conduct a review of all transportation part vendors used by the transportation department to ensure there's a formal contract in place, review the blanket order process, as well as develop auditing controls. It is correct on the main summary sheet, but we did not update it over here. It does show correct. So we will make that correction for the next report. The other, some more information has come to us since we had released this report to you. So if you go back to page 26, that first section of the donation and grant processes, develop written procedures of the district's grant and donation process. That last statement of financial procedures are established but not codified in written form, we were provided yesterday with the information that it is now at the school site level. So moving forward, that will be updated to show completed as well. The majority of the rest of these items do have report outs as of June. So we should be seeing a
We
more
are
robust
expecting a
report.
busy June audit committee meeting based on
Yes.
this calendar.
Yes, our goal is to potentially have 3 audits for you as well as the audit plan. So if we need to break that up, we will try our best to do that.
Yeah, I would rather, yeah, but we don't want, I think we're getting grading and attendance in June and July, right? The management action.
Grading
Grading, yeah.
practices, purchase cards, and contract management is the goal.
Yeah, so those are very important, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that is
Thank you.
all.
Anybody have any questions? All right. Our next meeting is June 26th, as we always do not have a meeting in May, so that some of you can attend. How many graduations? We ask that you all enjoy it, and we always do say congratulations to all our graduates. Congratulations. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.